Hey there, everybody. Good morning. I'm going to turn on the light here. Kristine Weber here. I'm going to be responding to some questions live today. So I'm just waiting a moment to see. Some people were planning on coming on, so I want to give them a moment to see. Hi, Diane. Nice that you're here. And also, if you're watching this after it's live, feel free to leave questions. I will get to them. You're welcome to put some questions in the comments. Okay, and then also I have people from my group who might want to come. Okay, so I'm going to get started because this is just going to be a quick live stream, about 10 or 15 minutes. I hope that you've been doing well, and those of you who are in the eye of the hurricane here in North Carolina, I hope you're safe. I hope you're not in the eye of the hurricane. I hope you've left the area and that you're safe. As you can see, it's very sunny here in the western part of the state, and we're supposed to get a lot of rain on Saturday. But I think it's gonna be fine out here. But definitely, I've seen the news, and I just want to send lots of love and prayers and support to people who are struggling and maybe have lost property. Okay, so the topic of today's live stream is this idea of interoception and hands-on assists. So the question was, if what you're going for with slow, mindful yoga practice is, hi, Sandy, glad you're here. If what you're going for with slow, mindful yoga practice is helping people to develop interoceptive awareness, to develop the interoceptive system, and through that practice, through that development, then to be able to come to a place of more homeostasis in the system, reducing stress, reducing chronic pain, reducing chronic illness, which we are now seeing the research out that's demonstrating that pathway. So if that's the intention, then the question is, what does putting your hands on somebody do? Like, does that disrupt that intention? It's a really good question, and I think it deserves a lot of attention. And I also think there's no, of course, unfortunately, the answer is always, it depends, right? There's no one answer to that question because it depends on the situation. It depends on the person. Okay. In general, in a class situation, when you have, let's say, 8 or more people, and you may not be well aware of the condition of everybody's nervous system perfectly, I mean, we never are. We don't even know our own nervous system, but you may not be aware of it. Then running around and adjusting everybody, putting your hands on everybody, typically I don't think it's a great idea. I mean, I think it does detract from this general interoceptive experience where people are trying to internalize their we're trying to help people internalize their locus of control. We're trying to help them internalize the process of noticing how their body feels and to reap the benefits from that. So just putting your hands on everybody constantly, it constantly pulls you out of yourself and into more of an exteroceptive, where am I, and proprioceptive, where am I kind of situation. Now, that being said, there are ways of helping people deepen their interoceptive awareness. If you yourself, as the yoga teacher, as the yoga therapist, is moving slowly, is occasionally guiding with a hand, and the touch that we know from what are called the low threshold mechanoreceptors, which have which run up the spinal cord and actually are not myelinated, and they have a very slow effect on the system. That touch is a slow and a superficial touch. It's not a hard move, quick kind of touch. It's more like a caress. So, and I'm not suggesting that you caress all of your students either. That's what I'm talking about. But occasionally, a hand, a soft hand on somebody's body can be helpful. Making sure that you have that relationship with your student, right? There's this relationship with your student where they accept it, they know it's coming, they welcome it, all of that stuff has to be in place. So a brand new person who comes to your class, it doesn't make sense to me if what you're trying to do is elicit this deep internal response, right, to the practice. So it depends is always the answer. And we have to think about each individual and what our relationship with them is, and how occasionally a hand can be helpful. Okay, so that was one thing I wanted to say. And then I wanted to go a little bit deeper by telling you a story that has both of these components in it. So I had a student many years ago in a training, and she was from another country, and she had been essentially a refugee. I mean, she had been essentially kicked out of the country with her family. Her family had suffered greatly at the hands of a brutal regime. And so she saw a lot of violence. And we were in a circle, and some sirens went by outside the room. And as the sirens were going off, she started to go into a dissociative state. And I didn't even know it at the time, actually. So dissociative state means she started kind of leaving her body and going into a trigger. We took a break, and then some people told me she was in the bathroom and needed help. And I went to the bathroom, and I saw that she was, and then I started to see that she was dissociated. She was trembling. She wasn't talking. She wasn't really coherent, and she just wasn't present. She was just shaking. So because I've studied trauma, and I knew a first sort of natural response might be put your hands on that person and support that person, right? But that was exactly the wrong thing to do. And I knew that because sometimes if you put your hands on the person, it reinforces the feeling of being unsafe. So instead, I did what's called orienting. I oriented her. I helped her get back into the present moment. I had her look into my eyes. I had her talk about what colors, because that stimulates the motor neuron networks and helps me to co-regulate her. I had her describe what I was wearing and where we were in the room and stuff. And all of that is just information from the front part of her brain to the limbic system to say, I'm safe, I'm here, I'm safe. That horrible thing that happened to me in the past is not happening right now. Okay, so I knew not to touch her. But then we went back into the classroom, and she was fine. She was okay with everybody knowing what she was going through, because small group, intimate experience, had lots of social bonding had already taken place. She was happy to be there. And one of the women in the group was a massage therapist, and said to her, would you like me to do a little Reiki and just gentle touch with you? So here we go, the gentle touch and the interoceptors again, right? And so she said, yeah, that would be great. And she was still, her body was very dysregulated, crying and shaking, but had got to the place where she was a little bit more self-regulated. She laid down on the floor, and the class went back, and we went back and did what we were doing. And then this massage therapist was with her and did some very gentle touch. And that touch helped her to get back, to go out of the dissociative state back into her body and be present in her body. So there's an example of how touch is very powerful and can be very healing. But if you're having that kind of situation in a yoga class, you're certainly not going to have time to go through that whole process I just described to help somebody come out of a dissociative state. Another time I had somebody in a dissociative state in a classroom in a yoga session was when I was doing yoga therapy at an intensive outpatient treatment program. And at that time, the woman who went into the dissociative state was in a treatment setting. And so I could guide her down the hall to her therapist, where her therapist did some of the same interventions I was just talking about and helped her get back into her body and back into a more regulated state. So, but that's it. But people can dissociate in a yoga class, and you may not know their mental health history. You may not know you might not have any idea about the condition of their nervous system. So this is a risk that we take as yoga teachers, and we have to be aware of that it's possible happening out there, although it doesn't happen that much. I don't think it hasn't happened to me that often, but putting your hands on a person can trigger it sometimes. So, I just think you have to be really careful with this stuff in yoga. The other thing to consider is, do you have a license to touch somebody? Are you a physician, a physician's assistant, a nurse, a massage therapist, occupational therapist, physical therapist? Do you have a license that says touching somebody is okay? And if you don't have that license, that's something that I think you need to bring into awareness with practices as well, or with teaching as well. So I hope this is helpful. I certainly appreciate y'all being here, Michelle and Michael and Diane and Sandy. It's so nice to see y'all in the same. I know all of you. You might not all know each other, but it's so nice to have you all here. And those of you who watch later, feel free to leave questions and comments. It's so nice to be here. I'm going to try and do a live stream every week, like Thursday or Friday. I'm in the middle of finishing. I'm almost finished up my course called The Yoga and Neuroscience Connection, which is going to come out September 25th. Yay! I'm really excited about it. Thank you for all of you who've purchased it already. If you want more information about it, you can just leave a comment here and I'll put a link in the comments. And it's just been nice being here. Stay safe and warm and dry if you're, well, maybe not warm, but stay safe and dry if you're in North Carolina. And I'll talk to you next week. Namaste.